Okay, this is a test of Granicus. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now do the ding-a-ling. Okay. This is the second test of Granicus. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The meeting is live.
Wonderful. Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Public Works Committee meeting. I'm joined by my colleagues, Council Members Lee, Leon, and Correct, and hopefully Mr. Rivera will join us shortly. Actually, before I can't just say that we need to officially take the polls. Why don't we do that to a formal start, even though I've already blown the surprise and told you who's here. So if you can please tell us what it was.
Okay, Councilmember Blumenfield.
Blumenfield present.
Councilmember Lee.
Present.
Councilmember De Leon.
Here.
Councilmember O'Farrell. And Councilmember Kretz.
Present.
We have 4 members and a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Great. And before we go to public comment, I want to recommend a technical amendment to item 1, which I recommend that we take on consent, but I want to make sure we put the amendment out prior to public comment, just so everybody knows. And specifically what it would say, would recommend a technical amendment that would say, 1, instruct the Bureau of Street Services in conjunction with the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority to coordinate a public services campaign on city street furniture, promoting resources available to individuals experiencing homelessness, and 2nd, to instruct the Bureau of Street Services with the assistance of the City Administrative Officer and the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority to report back with any requests for funding or additional resources. So now that we've put that out there, I think we can move to public comment. If you could set that up for us, let folks know what they need to know.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the public who would like to offer public comment on the items listed on the agenda should call 1-669-254-5252 and use meeting ID number 160-073-2397 and then press pound. Press pound again when prompted for participant ID. Once admitted into the meeting, press *9 to request to speak.
Great, and also just want to telegraph that my intention is to ask that we consider items 1, 3 through 7, and 9 on consent, and that we take up items 2 and 8 for discussion. Just wanted to put that out there for folks who may be calling in and for the members' knowledge. So with that, if we could take the callers.
Caller with the last 4 digits, 4844. Please press *6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the item you'd like to speak on. Please state your name and the item you would like to speak on.
Alash Amini, number 8.
You have a minute?
I'm sorry?
Go ahead, you have 1 minute.
You have 1 minute to speak. The floor is yours.
Okay, so I just want so with reference to item number 8, I just wanted to know that I personally have incurred over $20,000 in legal fees. So if the city decides to remove any of the condition, they wanted to figure out who's responsible for those fees, but I know the city have decided to keep those conditions intact. And while this legal fee is going on, I'm not able to refinance, nor have I been able to sell my house. I tried to sell my house, I put it in the market, and I've received offers, but the offers are being pulled back because I have a list pendant on my property, and nobody wants to buy a house with a list pendant. So I've lost 2 offers so far. I still have it on the market, but it's causing me a lot of headaches, to say the least.
Thank you. Caller with the last 4 digits 7603. Please press *6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the item you would like to speak on.
Yeah, my name is Josh Nadell. I'd like to speak on items 1, 2, and general public comment.
You have 2 minutes for the items and 1 for public comment.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, so item number 2, the Sidewalk and Transit Amenities Program, the STAT program, I think is very interesting. And normally I would be very pro that program, but I myself, so a bit of a background, I am a federally and state licensed tax preparer, a CPA candidate. I have an MBA from USC, and I am the chair of a new budget advocacy group for the neighborhood council system. And I think I came up with a solution for the city's financial deficit that it's in. I spoke the other day at the budget committee and followed that up by sending that proposal to the various council members that are on the budget committee, I believe several of whom are here. And so that proposal, it basically could raise the city a goodly amount of money, and it has some commonalities with this STAT program. And I would just like to hope that you guys could hold off on approving the STAT program until you at least have a chance to go through this proposal and ask any questions, because of some commonalities and the fact that this program could raise the city billions of dollars in addition to solving the financial hole. And I think that it would be very worthwhile to look into it. Like I said, I've already sent it out to several council members' offices already. I will follow that up today by sending an email to each of the 5 council members who comprise this committee, and I'll get that proposal sent out to you. Feel free to reach back out to me if you have any questions or anything. I've sent it out to a couple different locations in City Hall already, and have had some pretty positive responses. It's a program that also would help make the city very green and be the greenest city on the planet. And I could easily stand by that statement. And
I really hope your public comment. You have 1 minute for public comment.
Thank you. And I really hope that I get a chance to speak with you guys in an effort to help save my city from this financial distress, while also helping make it be a bright, shining city that people will think is one of the greatest cities on earth, even more so than it is today. I thank you all for your time and appreciate all the effort that you guys put in to the work that you do, and look forward to speaking with you all very soon. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you.
Caller with the last 4 digits 0918. Please press *6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the item you would like to speak on.
My name is Patrick Frank. I'd like to speak on item 2.
With 1 minute.
Thank you. My name is Patrick Frank. I'm the president of Scenic Los Angeles, and I want to comment on the motion, and I want to say that the motion is good as far as it goes, but it needs to go further. The STAT program as proposed will radically alter our streets. It will make them more dangerous and more commercialized. Therefore, there needs to be an environmental impact study that considers both traffic safety and power use. And further, the neighborhood councils need to be more empowered about this. The motion goes a certain direction in that way, but I think it needs to go further in allowing the neighborhood councils the opportunity to opt out of the new sidewalk and transit amenity program. Thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the last 4 digits 1474. Please press *6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the item you'd like to speak on.
Good afternoon. I'm Michael Schultz, Central City Association, and I'd like to speak on item 2, please.
1 minute.
We're pleased that the city is taking a comprehensive approach to the new street furniture contract. We believe wayfinding signage is an important piece of a holistic public realm, and we have joined with a coalition of community organizations working on wayfinding systems in different parts of the city. Currently, there's no centralized city agency or office responsible for overseeing and coordinating these efforts, and they're implemented in an ad hoc fashion. We believe the new program offers a unique opportunity to unify and coordinate what is a currently disconnected system and process. To do so, we request that the new contract include a provision for working with community partners to fund, implement, and maintain existing wayfinding systems across the city today, as well as new wayfinding systems. We also believe that it's important for public works projects across the city to be able to leverage advertising revenues and that it not be an exclusive right of any vendor. Thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the last 4 digits, 7603. Please press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the item you would like to speak on.
I already spoke. There must be some error where I'm speaking again. Thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the last 4 digits, 8134. Please press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the item you would like to speak on.
Hello, my name is Barbara Brady, and I'm speaking on item 2, and I'm speaking on behalf of the West Side Neighborhood Council. So may I have additional time?
Right, unless there's a CIS, formal CIS.
We do have a CIS. We do have a CIS statement on item 2.
Okay, then on item 2, you'll have an additional minute. So you have 2 minutes for item 2 and 1 minute for the other item.
Okay, thank you very much. We are very supportive of the motion presented by the council members, but also believe that it should go further. There is a great deal of confusion and a lack of information in the communities about this proposed program. Although the department is going out and doing a number of outreach sessions and presentations, the listings, if you will read them, about the information sessions and the announcements in the email never mention the word digital signage. It never mentions the information tracking or the data issues. It never represents the program as anything more but a new version of the old program. And communities do not understand what this means. They don't understand the difference between repurposed old billboards and the old shelters and the new proposed digital signs. They haven't seen the list of what the preferred locations are. I know in Council District 5, we are the leading location with preferred sites, and would have 92 of the new shelters. Other communities will have none of the new shelters. We're concerned about the bundling of approvals and the ability of communities to opt out and or question locations that are selected. We want the opportunity to opt out. There is an issue about the cumulative impacts of having this program roll out, potential of changes to the sign ordinance, as well as a metro program that would digitize signage. These are things that are of concern about traffic safety, about the aesthetics, about the quality of life in the community. And we understand the need for having all of our communities covered with shade and shelter from rain and the elements. But this program will last a very long time, and the expectations for the last 20 years were not nearly met. And we want to be sure that we have a voice when this is being discussed. The RFP should never have gone out without community input, and now we're trying to make up for lost time, and we think we need more discussion, more conversation, more outreach that's honest and direct, and that shares all the details with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Caller with the last 4 digits, 0918. Please press star 6 to unmute yourself.
I already spoke once, so I don't need to speak again. Thank you.
Caller with the last four digits, 0605. Please press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the item you would like to speak on.
Robin Greenberg, Secretary of the RAC, which is the Regional Alliance of Westside Neighborhood Councils, item number 2. And I'm also President of the Bel Air Beverly Crest Neighborhood Council.
You have 2 minutes.
The Bel Air Beverly Crest Neighborhood Council supports the motion that the Bureau of Street Services be instructed to continue the public engagement process while the Sidewalk and Transit Amenities Program STAP request for proposals RFP process is underway. Provide a public report on the proposals received in response to the RFP and report to the City Council within 60 days of receiving proposals. The Westside Regional Alliance of Council supports the Bond and Blumenfeld CF 20-1536, and prior to contract finalization, the City conduct an extensive and open public process in which detailed information about STAP and the RFP and the contract negotiation process is made widely available, and members of the public, community leaders, and the neighborhood community councils are invited to provide ongoing input on community impacts, problems, and ridership needs with respect to STAP. In connection with any contract that is eventually negotiated, the City respect and abide by community plans, specific plan, scenic highway, and coastal zone protections and requirements, including in the public right-of-way, and addresses constituents' concerns about preservation of community character, protection of residential neighborhoods, public safety, environmental impacts, and privacy infringement. All protections for scenic corridors, for local street furniture preferences, and for neighborhoods with specific plans and codified prohibitions against off-site advertising that were negotiated and included in the J.C. DeCa contract be carried forward in any new contract that is negotiated, and the City restrict any new digital signs in or near bus shelters to sign districts in the 22 areas already zoned as regional commercial for high-intensity commercial use. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Caller with the last four digits, 9793. Please press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the item you would like to speak on.
Are we now taking separate public comment on item number 8?
You can speak on item 8 now. You have 1 minute.
Thank you. Michael Gonzalez, representing the property owner. We appreciate the neighbors' comments. We have worked for years to try to obtain their consents. We have a letter to the record where we don't feel the consents are legally obligated in this situation. Nevertheless, we have endeavored over the course of 5 years to obtain those consents. To date, we've obtained 12 of 16 consents. Additionally, even based on city attorney's letter on the record, condition number 8 needs to be modified to remove the consent obligation from the remaining 2 property owners, Lot 1 of Tract 21537 and Lot 32 of Tract 16690. We appreciate the council members' efforts and council staff's efforts in helping us resolve this problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Caller with the last four digits, 4844. Please press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the item you would like to speak on.
This is Alash Amini. I spoke on number 8, but I got disconnected. I want to make sure my voice was heard initially.
Yes, we heard you.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. Caller with the last four digits, 0918. Please press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the item you would like to speak on.
I'm just trying to listen without speaking, so thank you.
Caller with the last four digits, 1264. Please press star 6 to unmute yourself.
Yes.
Please state your name and the item you'd like to speak on.
Yeah, I'd like to speak on public comment. Public comment is on illegal vending and the problem that we have with them blocking the sidewalks and vandalizing the sidewalk with grease, the big old stains of grease, and not allowing people to get by, very intimidating, people standing in people's way. Also, the fact that a lot of them are coming in, encroaching on the residential areas, and causing a lot of traffic problems and pedestrian problems in the residential areas. And we need to do something about that. We need to create an amendment to the fact that you can't enforce it, that you can only give out citations and notices of violations. This needs to be enforced. Otherwise, somebody is going to get hurt. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Call with the last four digits, 7006. Please press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the item you'd like to speak on.
Yes, Goat Puppet, Art Critic, all items and general comment.
3 minutes.
Yeah, so as we come here today, welcome to our new puppet, Kevin Day Ryan. Yes. So number one, public service campaign promoting resources for the homeless. Yes, Goat Puppet supports it. That's really good. So when they continue to dump sewage into the LA River in Bob's district, which is on the corner of Etiwanda and Burbank Boulevard, go down there and take a look at that. Bob Bleeding Bleald is the worst council member in history. What about Monica Rodriguez? No, she's the best. Shut up. I'm sorry. Don't interrupt me. Now, number two, relative to sidewalk and transit amenities. Yes. How about garbage cans to pick up this garbage? Well, Bob and Boyle doesn't do it. How come Gil Cedillo does it? Even Kevin Day Ryan does it. Paul Koretz doesn't do it. All you have to do is go down White Oak, Havenhurst, Balboa, under the 101, and Paul Koretz has all of the sidewalk amenities blocked by his homeless clients. He doesn't care about all of us. Isn't that why Ms. Martinez took him off budget? That's right. He's been punished. Yes, good. Thank you, Mommy. Now we continue. Give me the phone, asshole. Here it is. Yes, number 4. Fuck number 4. Number 5. Fuck number 5. Number 6. I don't have any comment on that. Number 7.
General public comment.
Oh. Yes, now you can talk in general. Yes. Now, how come Bob Bleeding Bleald, Paul Peppa Pig Koretz, isn't doing what Monica's doing in her district? Monica cleans up homeless encampments. And all of her streets look really pretty. Well, all of our streets in Encino, Tarzana, Reseda, Woodland Hills, look like a pile of fucking dog shit. How come that is? The reason why is because they're using their Judaism against all of us goats. Only 2 of them. We must replace all of the Jews with Latinos, just like the Budget and Finance Committee. Yes. So unfortunately,
That's good, Tim. Follow with the last 4 digits, 2699. Please press star 6 to unmute yourself. Please state your name and the item you would like to speak on.
Hi, good afternoon. Payman Yadagar on item number 8.
You have 1 minute.
Thank you. I want to thank everyone for taking the time to review this item. Over the last 20 years, it's important to note that this alley has been locked and secured because of homelessness and other issues. And we've obtained 75% consent of the homeowners on Canby. And we have over 300 signatures from apartment residents on Reseda Boulevard that are in support of this motion. We'd also like to request that the city consider waiving the requirement of the 4 residents on Canby that are holdouts in completing this and getting this alley taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes public comment.
Great, thank you. That brings us then to...
You are muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Councilor.
So that brings us to the agenda, and what I'd like us to start with is to approve items 1 as amended, as I mentioned earlier, 3 through 7, and item 9 on consent. And I don't see any objection to that. Do I see any objection to that? Then if we could call the roll on taking those on block on consent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just for the record, Councilmember O'Farrell has joined us. So Councilmember Blumenfield?
And welcome, Councilmember O'Farrell. Blumenfield, aye.
Councilmember Lee?
Aye.
Councilmember De Leon?
Aye.
Councilmember O'Farrell? And Councilmember Councilmember Caress?
Aye.
That's 5 yeses, and these items pass, and that was item number 1 is amended, items 3 through 7, and item number 9.
Great, thank you. So that brings us to item number 2. I'd like to invite Lance Oshie to provide us a brief update on the Sidewalk Transit Amenities Program and the community outreach completed to date. I also want to telegraph that I'm going to make a recommendation that we the city attorney to prepare and present an ordinance that changes to effectuate the elimination of exclusivity upon the expiration of the existing contract, including LA Code 6702, so the potential advertising program in the right of way must be approved by the Board of Public Works, and thereby ensures coordination through police LA and the agency responsible for the contract. This was an issue that we certainly discussed in the past. It's a big one in terms of whether or not the contract moving forward is exclusive or not exclusive. The previous contract has been exclusive, and this recommendation, should we adopt it, will mean that it is not exclusive anymore. With that, Mr. Oshie, if you could provide us an update.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Lance Oshie with the Vending Forces. And with me this afternoon, I have Martin Schlageter and Adele, our executive director. And we just wanted to say that Streets LA supports the intent of the motion and is committed to providing reports and policy options on each of the points identified in the motion. We're aiming to inform those reports and recommendations with both the public input and with what we learned from the proposals that we received in response to the RFP. There's a few points I want to kind of touch on really quickly to give you a brief status update. We have been very actively soliciting public input since the release of the RFP. So far, since December 5th, we've had 16 public outreach meetings with more than 350 people in attendance. Neighborhood councils have been the central focus of those meetings, but not all of them. And so 9 of the 16 meetings have been with neighborhood councils or neighborhood council coalitions. And again, our general manager, Adele Hoshkaville, has been doing all the presentations at those meetings, so it's they've been well received. Our next public meeting, in fact, is next week on the 16th, on February 16th. And, you know, when we have these meetings, we're inviting people to share their views and ideas and with us through the multiple means, even if it's at the meeting or through an online survey that we have available on our website. I just also want to make a note that we've created an interactive map that allows people to zoom in the particular neighborhoods and see where the bus stops are at, ridership levels at those bus stops, things like heat levels at those bus stops, where our existing furniture are at right now, regional attractors like senior citizen centers or hospitals. And, you know, these are some of the factors that we're all considering when we're trying to play through furniture. So it allows people to be able to view that and see exactly what we're thinking. As far as the RP goes, again, we released that RP right after Thanksgiving. And right now we're on course to have those responses due on the 19th, so a little more than a week away or so. And so with the timing, I expect us to be ready to start reporting on policy issues in the motion around the end of March or beginning April, again, because we need to review the proposals and see what those are all about. And we're very excited about the opportunity to modernize the program and expand the facilities and services that are available. We really want to serve the transit riders out there and the other users of the sidewalk. And we really want to fix things from our current program, as the council mentioned, like the Exclusivity Clause. So, we hope to bring more public investment onto our streets and sidewalks and just improve the general quality of our streets. And so, with that, we're open for questions. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you very much. I'll start out with a couple questions and open it up to my colleagues. I appreciate what you said about the timeline. That sounds good. That was my first question. So just please assure me, is there any risk that we're not going to have a new agreement in place when the city's current street furniture agreement expires at the end of this year, or do you feel good that we're on track?
So far, we're on track, and as long as our negotiations are done in a fairly expedient manner, we think that we can meet that deadline and have a contract in place by the end of the year.
That would be good to have no gap there. It's obviously been a long time coming. We're 20 years. So this is not something that's sneaking up on us. Has Street Services been in consultation with ITA and the city attorney on the data collection issues, management regulations that we have to follow to ensure the privacy of any user's data, to make sure that those things are secure and protected? Has that been a part of the conversation?
It has been. We've been in touch with both city attorney and ITA. We know that ITA is currently trying to finalize their draft digital information technology policy right now and data collection. So we are waiting for the finalization of that draft, and we're committed to including that as part of the requirements for any potential respondent to our RFP that we may negotiate a contract with. And so we are considering those, and we are trying to, again, incorporate those type of limits and controls into the future program.
Right, because this is an issue that was very different 20 years ago, the last time this contract was up. This is much more real now in terms of those issues, what that means. So thank you for that, and we look forward to that. And what about different city ordinances? Do you anticipate that we are going to need to change some of them regarding governing, regarding advertising in the right of way, or other issues related to the implementation of the street furniture program? If you could give us a little preview of what laws may need to be changed on our books in order to effectuate this contract.
Well, I think the most important one is the ones you mentioned already, Councilman, which is the Exclusivity Clause. And the current municipal code has some certain limitations in that regard, so we'll have to make some changes there. There are other things that we are looking at right now in regards to, again, other policies, but we're trying to gather that information as we speak with the council members, neighborhood councils, and doing our public outreach, as well as, again, to see what the proposals come back with as far as the programs that they want to try to, wow us with, so to speak. And, depending on what we select from a program perspective, then we think we can have a better grasp of specific policy decisions that we could come back to the council with.
Great. Yeah, I just want to make sure we're on board and on track on some of those, because some of those changes take time to make. But you guys, I do want to compliment the fact that you've been out there doing it with the neighborhood councils and having these discussions early on in this process. So thank you for that. And I want to open it up to my colleagues, Mr. Lee, and then Mr. Brett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hey, Lance.
Good afternoon.
Hey, I don't remember in the past contract, because I know it's tied to advertising, but as council office, obviously, each of our districts are a little different. I know that my district has one of the hottest areas in the city of Los Angeles, along with Councilmember Blumenfield. Do we have the ability, because I know it's tied to where they want to advertise, but we still have the ability to actually request certain places that these stops be, right?
Most definitely. One of the big difference between today and 20 years ago is the fact that we have this map available to us, these mapping tools. We didn't, 20 years ago, we didn't even know where all the bus stops were at in the city, quite frankly. We do now. And we know the ridership numbers for each bus stop. And now we're able to layer heat information on top of that and a bunch of different other data sets that are helping us to make those determinations. And so the plan is for street services or the city to provide the contractor with the list of locations that we want them to install shelters at versus where they want to install shelters at for their benefit. And through that discussion, we hope to come to a mutually acceptable list that we're able to give the contractor, and they'll be able to move expeditiously with the installations after that. And so the plan is actually to develop a list on an annual basis and come before the council to vet and review and approve those lists. And again, if there are sites that maybe the council offices has heard from a constituent group that they would like a shelter at a particular location, we can certainly add those in.
Councilman, this is Adele Hashfali, and I want to just echo that as part of the council direction and this committee's direction, providing shade and shelter is a priority for this program, supported by revenue from advertising, but it doesn't exclude if areas need shade and shelter, it will be provided as a priority. And there's a minimum goal that we're setting that 75% of the ridership across the city in every community will have a shade and shelter. That's a minimum equity metric that we're establishing, and we're going to continue bringing that forward as we move through the implementation. But that's critical for us. Shade and shelter are what's driving this program, and that's important for us.
Thanks, Adele. And Lance, I assume that, well, I don't know if I should assume this, but that like the current contract that we have now, council offices can expect to receive about the same amount of revenue that we've received under the past contracts regarding, for community amenities.
We anticipate that is true, that council offices should be able to receive the same level of funding right now that we're receiving right now, and we'll then that forward.
So this is Adele. One of the things that we're going to bring as a policy decision, and what we heard from the community members and others, is that we need to invest more in the streets around shelters, making the sidewalks, the access ramps, and the trees and the crosswalks safe, because one of the things we want to make sure is that transit shelters are not on an island, they're accessible. So would be a balance between continuing to support the existing distribution of funds, but I think as we are anticipating to receive more funds, we want to invest that into the investing into the infrastructure to make the streets and sidewalks safer and accessible. So we're going to be coming to you as part of the policy decisions that you'll be making at committee and council as we move forward in the implementation of this program. So it'll be specific dialogue and discussions and recommendations, but we would like to establish at least a floor for that initial funding. But beyond that, I think we want to figure out a way how we can invest in the community to make these sidewalks and amenities accessible and safe. So we'll be coming to you with more details as we see the revenue that's coming in. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good selling point, but a lot of times we use those amenities funds that we know that we're going to be receiving to sell these sites. Some communities don't want them. They don't fit into what they feel is the look of their feel of their community, but it allows us to, show them that by receiving these things that we're able to provide some funds. So
it'll be exactly the same thing. We'll be investing in the community and in around these structures to make it safe and accessible. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks, guys. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sorry about that. Thank you very much, Mr. Koretz, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a few questions. One is I'm curious about the expiration of the current contract with J.C. Deco, and particularly I understand that roughly $22 million assets stays with the city, and how are we planning on maintaining those assets? And generally, can you talk to us about the expiration of the contract?
Certainly. The existing contract is set to expire on the end of this year, December 31st, 2021. And, what we've worked on is incorporating contingencies within the RFP itself to help address those end of contract terms with Outfront & Co. Namely, we plan not to allow the new advertiser to advertise on the existing structures. And so that allows us to leave existing structures in place. We will have the new contractor maintain those structures in the interim so that the service is continued without disruption. And, there's a couple other outstanding items that we're still under discussion with the co about, namely the possessory interest tax that the county has imposed upon our program, but we are in discussions with them to resolve that at this point. So we think that we've resolved a lot of those in the contract terms that were of concern earlier, again, through the language that we have incorporated into the RFP.
And why would we not continue to advertise on those facilities that were created as advertisement spaces?
The existing contract has a term that condition it under which if JC2Co is no longer our contractor, but we're allowing another vendor or contractor to advertise on the structures, then there is a residual program value that they feel they're due. And that is the $22 million figure that you may have heard about. And so to avoid having to, possibly endure that type of penalty, we were going to require the new contractor to, first of all, replace a lot of, about 600 to 700 structures in the first year so that we can start generating revenue of our own through the new structures and again, not have to advertise on the existing structures and avoid that financial penalty.
And what's going to happen with the public toilets that the current contractor has installed, and were they problematic relating to the homeless? Did encampments spring up around them or not? And if we're going to replace them, would we take that into account?
So our current RFP allows proposers to include public toilets as an option of the program, but it is not a mandatory requirement of the STAT program. So there's room for us if we have a proposer, say if Outfront JC2Co comes back to us and includes automated toilets in their proposal, there's room to allow for that. If we have a contractor that does not have automated toilets within their program, within their proposal, we have an alternate plan to create a separate standalone public toilet program that will continue that service for the city beyond the term of Outfront JC2Co. And we're exploring options like other automated public toilets that are out there on the market that are available through commercial manufacturers versus an outdoor advertising company. And as far as the toilets themselves, initially there was a lot of fear about indigent behavior or homeless when the toilets were installed. And I think that at least for the first 10 to 12 years of the program, we found that to be true and untrue, that actually the toilets were actually well maintained. They did not attract a lot of crime and illicit behavior that we didn't want to see. But over the years, especially within the last several years with the proliferation of our challenges with our homeless population, to be honest, we have seen some of that happen, especially in the downtown area, but in a lot of our other areas, the toilets remain perfectly functional and free of any type of security issues. And so where we have had those challenges with security issues, within the last 2 years, we started putting attendants at the toilets, and that's proven to be very, very successful. And that has helped us combat a lot of those challenges that we were seeing before. And we hope to continue the attendant program if we move forward with the new public toilet program.
And in terms of revenue, how do we compare with other cities, other major cities around the world, around the country, like London, New York, Chicago, and are we looking at ways to increase our revenue so we can match some of those cities.
Most definitely, and that's actually one of the features of our new RFP, which is for the respondents to provide us with different revenue strategies and funding strategies as part of their submittal. We understand that there are different business models out there that have been employed with Transport for London being the most successful right now. That has seen them enable that City of London to receive revenues probably tenfold of what we're getting right now. That calls for the revenue for the City of London actually to make that capital investment and then have the companies basically operate the advertising program on those structures. But whether we go that route or whether we go to the more traditional route where the vendor is able to, support all those CapEx costs and still provide revenues to us is something, again, we'll be evaluating. But we think that through some combination of that, we will be able to recognize and receive more revenue than we are right now. And the other big game changer that wasn't in place 20 years ago that is in place now is the digital advertising component. And that is really something that even if we were able to just put in, say, several hundred additional digital advertising shelters with digital advertising panels on them, we foresee that it would possibly double the revenues that we're getting right now. So we're hopeful and we're looking forward to seeing what the proposals come back with, and we're going to try to provide the best options for the city to move forward with.
And I think, Councilman Koretz, I think the decision made by committee and council to go with competitive bidding to allow for competition, I think that really going to help maximize the return on the investment in what we're looking at. So we look forward for that, although we're dealing with a pandemic and the revenues in the advertising market is not as high as it was before, but this is a long-term program, and we anticipate that receive very comprehensive and very, I would say, good proposals for the city to help us move forward and address the needs that we have. So we're excited about the opportunity to really put it on the market and see what the market decides.
And I know one of the concerns that's always been expressed to me about digital advertising is the distraction factor. Now, I don't know if we've looked at that closely. I suspect street furniture may be less distracting because it's not as much of a distance from the normal line of sight as our digital billboards. But I'm also wondering if there are newer technologies that have made it more palatable and less distracting in recent years. So I wonder if you could speak to those elements as well.
So the digital component in the of media displays, we are looking at that. We will be reviewing that as part of our studies for the environmental documentation for the program. We've heard concerns about the brightness and the distracting qualities of billboards, and we're trying to find studies that actually pertain to media displays or on transit shelters or something of that format, and we're still researching. So far, we have not found any studies that actually talk about digital panels on something the size of a transit shelter. There are studies on large billboards that are 30 to 40 times larger than our transit shelters, but that's a very, very different perspective and different component out there that people are looking at. So we continue to pursue that. We will try to, again, incorporate those policies, and those are some things we hope to come forward with towards the end of March, beginning April.
And there's actually best practices and parameters that have been established for the control, and the technology has advanced tremendously to have it what we call static, like digital advertising without animation or movement, and adjust to the light outside. But we will work on one of the things that we're going to be asking for is have real installations and have part of the policy discussion is a review and looking at this. So there is smart controls. It's very adjusted. There's the time of change. There is the illumination and as compared to outside. But the technology has advanced so much that it looks like what we have as static right now. But we will present that to you for guidance and for recommendation as we get the proposals. Technologies vary between companies, and we want to be able to get all that in place as we move forward.
Okay, and Mr. Chair, if I could ask one last question. Relating to constituent feedback, I've heard concerns, one, that community groups and outreach were not informed of the digital element to this new contract, and also it sounds like there are concerns that some districts like mine may wind up with 80 or 90 bus shelters, and other council districts are proposed for none. Is there a way to get a more equitable distribution of those?
Yeah, I believe so. And again, we're using data to help us determine where to place shelters, and especially new furniture. I think what a lot of constituents are referring to is our map that we talked about. And what we have on our map right now are you heard me mention earlier that we want to replace 600 or 700 locations in the first year to help, prime the revenue pump to keep the program financially solvent. And so what we have are there are existing shelters on the street right now that we intend to upgrade or change in that first year, and that's what people are looking at. And so they're not new shelters. I mean, they're new shelters in the sense that they are brand new from a factory, but they're at the same location where the existing shelter is at right now. And so it's not a brand new location. And again, we are using our data to help us cite where we want to relocate those shelters to, or where we want to put new shelters based upon transit ridership needs, based upon heat, based upon, again, different regional attractors that might necessitate transit stop at certain locations. And so I think that we are in fact addressing that. I'm not sure where folks are not. It's unclear why folks are not understanding that, getting the message that we are.
Lance, let me try and answer this one, if you don't mind. I mean, I've been there talking to the LA Neighborhood Council Coalition, the Valley Coalition, Neighborhood Councils, the West Side Coalition. We're very clear in our presentation, our discussion about the different parameters and issues. We clearly talk about digital in very clear what the issues are, what the dialogue is, and how we're trying to address it. It's very clear. We have received a huge support from many of the business improvement districts and many of the hotel associations, many of the businesses and others. However, we continue to say that the decision on the parameters and where and how and the extent will be a policy decision by you. And my job is to present to you the parameters. And what I want you to guide us is to give us those bookends that I call. So I think Lance mentioned that starting late March, we're going to be coming to you on various policy decisions as outlined in the chair's motion regarding that you're hearing today is specific issues and parameters. One is, Councilman Lee talked about the funding, one is digital, one is data. All these things are going to be a standalone policy decisions that will be brought to you before we bring the contract to you. We want to have you provide input as committee and as council on these matters with the information that we have and recommendation based on the information, and you will guide us, and then we'll take that and put it into the program. So, I think this is, we are committing and we are listening and we're communicating with the community, and I've been to several meetings across the city, all the way from Winnetka to Palms, all the way to the Valley and to East LA and many of the communities across the city to have a dialogue. And we are very transparent on the issues, very transparent on the decisions, and we continue to work through it. And I think what would be critical is that as we get these proposals and do this review and analysis, we'll be coming to you with policy decisions and recommendations for your guidance as we form the final contract and move forward. So,
thank you.
Okay, Mr. O'Farrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Lance, and thank you, Adele, and the whole team for this this great conversation and your reporting. Question about the life of the contract. Will it be commensurate with the contract that we are bringing to a close? Will it be similar to a 10-year and then a renewable, or will it be broken up differently? What do you anticipate?
So within our RFP, we mentioned that the initial term is going to be for 10 years, and that's a little bit different from our current contract, which is a 20-year contract. However, we are also offering up 2 5-year renewal periods that could be added on to that after the fact.
Okay, separated differently, but some more additional safeguards for the city's oversight. That's great. Second question is in relation to sidewalk width, especially in older parts of the city, like the area that I represent for the most part. Sometimes we try to, there are bus stops where the sidewalks are very narrow, and they might be right up against a different publicly owned property, such as Caltrans, for example, along Riverside Drive in Elysian Valley. There are obstacles to actually putting a shade structure if the sidewalk is too narrow. Can you address that? Is there a way we could be very inventive with the way we still provide shade? It's great that we're able to put something to lean on or a bench to sit on, but in the hot, glaring sun or in a rainstorm, when you see people waiting for a bus, it's heartbreaking. So how do we address these difficult to engineer adequate shelter for people who are waiting?
So we have a couple exciting things that we're working on and that we think will help address this in part. Number one is you heard us talk about policy decisions about the reinvestment of program revenues. And we feel that if we're able to do that, we will be able to provide the improvements necessary at some of these really difficult bus stops that will provide us with the room and space that we need to put, possible new structures out there. The other thing we're working on right now as part of ED 25 actually is we went through a workshop with our bus bench contractor to develop shade structures that could be installed in narrower sidewalk conditions that would work in conjunction with our existing bus benches and that the bus bench contractor would maintain as part of their normal service. And we're in the process of trying to go through the design development for those right now. And if it is successful, we hope to be able to expand upon that to initially put out 300 of these shelters, these shade structures over our bus benches. And then beyond that, again, especially if it proves to be as successful as we hope it will be, to expand that and incorporate it in more locations.
I think that sounds great. I love it. Is there a way that we can bake into the RFP some way of taking a look at where those shelters are needed in the immediate so that is part of the program that rolls out first?
Yes, in fact, that's another feature of the RFP itself is that we are looking for the respondents to provide us with design options that provide that type of flexibility we're looking for, so that we will be able to install shelters at some of these tougher locations where right now space might prohibit us from doing that or some other factor that might be out there, that physical constraint. We can work around that hopefully and provide the shade and shelter that people desperately need out there.
Thank you. Last question, Mr. Chair, and that is, I think the site-specific design development is going to be very, very critical. Now, one example of where that is of incredible importance to me is our Hollywood Walk of Fame Master Plan, which we are really getting toward the end of that whole design process. That is everything along the Walk of Fame. And it'll be a multi-million-dollar investment in the public right-of-way. So we're in the thick of designing a consistent aesthetic along the boulevard that has elements of Art Deco, etc. We already have a bit of a wayfinding design envisioned, and feedback signs for where parking is available, etc. It's all part of. It also seems to be part of your site-specific design program that's citywide with this new contract. We've had literally 65 roundtable meetings in Hollywood over the last year and a half. So just want to make sure that that looms large and there's not a cookie-cutter approach to this, especially when there's probably a handful of communities that have already contemplated what consistent and thematic design for bus shelters and other amenities would look like. And I would hope there will be a sense of deference to advances already made within those communities. And of course, specifically for me, I'm talking about the Hollywood Walk of Fame master plan.
You know, I can definitely support that. I think that within our RFP language, actually, we have there are provisions in it that actually call for that type of flexibility and to specifically address the community character. And we've been talking with your staff about the Hollywood Walk of Fame project. We understand Gensler Architecture Firm has their designs, and we've seen them. We think that we can work with our new contractor to develop shelters in conjunction with the master plan that will match the character of that community specifically, and carry on with that theme that there is being sought after for that boulevard. We hope to do that in other communities as well. Again, through the flexibility built into the design of the shelters that we are asking our proposers to provide for us.
That's terrific, because I mentioned Elysian Valley earlier. There's a bit of a river aesthetic there, so perhaps the community will want to pay homage to that resource. And I imagine there's pride in a lot of our communities, and this is a way to enhance that and elevate greater community involvement for having pride and unique neighborhood characteristics to be expressed in the design of these shelters. So I look forward to that conversation. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mr. O'Farrell. Are there any other comments or questions from the committee members? Seeing none, we'll move forward on this item, and just remind the public this is an item about engaging the public. This is not approving any contracts or anything like this. This is really about enhanced engagement. But I did mention at the beginning how I wanted to include one additional recommendation in the what we approved today, and I want to read that clearly this time so folks know exactly what I'm talking about, which is request the city attorney to prepare and present an ordinance changes to effectuate the elimination of exclusivity upon expiration of the existing contract, including Los Angeles Municipal Code Section 67.02, so that potential advertising programs in the right-of-way must be approved by the Board of Public Works and thereby ensures coordination through Streets LA, the agency responsible for street furniture contracts. Basically, it's changing the exclusivity. So with that, colleagues, I'd like to move the recommendations, approve the motion with the additional recommendation that I just read. And if you could call the roll.
Yes, Councilmember Blumenfield.
Thank you, Mr. Espinosa. Blumenfield, aye.
Councilmember Lee.
Aye.
Councilmember De Leon. Councilmember O'Farrell.
Aye.
And Councilmember Kretz.
Aye.
Item 2 passes as amended.
Mute there. Great, thank you. That brings us to item 8, I believe. Chair Espinosa, would you read item 8 into the record, please?
Yes, item number 8 is a report from the city engineer relative to the vacation of a alley easterly of Reseda Boulevard from Irwin Street to approximately 153 feet northerly of Bessemer Street.
Great, thank you. And colleagues, this is something that's been going on in my district for a number of years, where it deals with an alley vacation. There's some complex issues, but we've been working with all the parties involved, the neighbors and everyone else, to come to and address the concerns. Consequently, I submitted a letter with my recommendations. They're in the report, but also for anybody following along, they're listed as separately as a letter, so that you can pull it up on the file with additional recommendations that really came out of conversations with the community, and this includes things like a wall and lighting and security cameras, all as requirements of this. Plus, importantly, there's the issue of consent. As BOE knows, we legally, we can waive this consent. We are not waiving consent in this case. So in order to vacate the alley, all of the neighbors that are abutting that alley do have to give their consent. However, we're also clarifying that it only applies to the neighbors abutting the alley and not to folks that are beyond that point. And that's what the last item makes that clear. So with that, colleagues, what I'd like to do is adopt the BOE report. Well, let me ask if there's any comments or questions on this item. I should, seeing none, what I'd like to recommend is that we adopt the BOE report dated October 13th, 2016, with the amended conditions as listed in the communications that I submitted into the council file. So with that, if we could call the roll.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Councilmember Bloomfield?
Bloomfield, aye.
Councilmember Lee?
Aye.
Councilmember De Leon?
Aye.
Councilmember O'Farrell?
Aye.
And Councilmember Kratz?
Aye.
That item passes as amended.
Great. Thank you very much. Is there anything else on the desk, Mr. Espinosa?
No, the desk is clear.
Wonderful. Then thank you, everybody, for being part of this meeting, and this meeting is hereby adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.